Welcome back, everyone. I'm Miss Andrea from the Hussey-Mayfield Memorial Public Library, and we're ready tonight for another chapter of our evening read aloud of Anna Sewell's book, Black Beauty. We're ready for chapter 36, called The Sunday Cab. Now, we saw in our last chapter that Black Beauty, who his new master Jerry calls Jack, and his master were glad to help a young man catch his train when he had been delayed by an accident, because he wasn't just careless and he expected someone else to make up time that he had wasted. Because it wasn't through any fault of his own, they were happy to help him because he had an accident. And today we'll find out more about how Jerry feels about being a cabman and when it's okay to have his horses work, he and his horses work, and when he needs to take some time off to let the horses rest and for he himself to get a bit of a rest and to spend some time with his family. We're ready for chapter 36, called The Sunday Cab. One morning, as Jerry had just put me into the shafts and was fastening the traces, a gentleman walked into the yard. "Your servant, sir," said Jerry. "Good morning, Mr. Barker," said the gentleman. "I should be glad to make some arrangements with you for taking Mrs. Briggs regularly to church on Sunday mornings. We go to the new church now, and that is rather further than she can walk." "Thank you, sir," said Jerry, "but I have only taken out a 6 days license, and therefore I could not take a fare on a Sunday. It would not be legal." So for Jerry to run his cab business, he has to have a license from the City of London. And he got one that allows him to work on 6 days, but not all 7. So he legally could not take Mrs. Briggs to church. "Oh," said the other, "I did not know yours was a 6 days cab, but of course it would be very easy to alter your license. I would see that you did not lose by it. The fact is, Mrs. Briggs very much prefers you to drive her." "I should be glad to oblige the ladies, sir, but I have had a 7 days license once, and the work was too hard for me and too hard for my horses. Year in and year out, not a day's rest, and never a Sunday with my wife and children, and never able to go to a place of worship, which I had always been used to do before I took to the driving box. So for the last 5 years, I have only taken a 6 days license, and I find it better all the way round." "Well, of course," replied Mr. Briggs, "it is very proper that every person should have rest and be able to go to church on Sundays, but I should have thought you would have not minded such a short distance for the horse, and only once a day. You would have all the afternoon and evening for yourself, and we are very good customers, you know." "Yes, sir, that is true, and I am grateful for all favors, I am sure, and anything that I could do to oblige you or the lady I should be proud and happy to do, but I can't give up my Sunday, sir, indeed I can't. I read that God made man, and he made horses and all the other beasts, and as soon as he had made them, he made a day of rest, and bade that all should rest 1 day in 7, and I think, sir, he must have known what was good for them, and I am sure it is good for me. I am stronger and healthier altogether now that I have a day of rest. The horses are fresh too, and do not wear up nearly so fast. The 6-day drivers all tell me the same, and I have laid more by money in the savings bank than I ever did before. And as for my wife and children, sir, why, heart alive, they would not go back to the 7 days for all they could get by it." "Oh, very well," said the gentleman. "Don't trouble yourself, Mr. Barker, any further. I will inquire somewhere else." And he walked away. "Well," says Jerry to me, "we can't help it, Jack, old boy. We must have our Sundays. Polly," he shouted, "Polly, come here." She was there in a minute. "What is it all about, Jerry?" "Why, my dear, Mr. Briggs wants me to take Mrs. Briggs to church every Sunday morning. I say I have only a 6 days license. He says, get a 7 days license and I'll make it worth your while. And you know, Polly, they are very good customers to us." Mrs. Briggs often goes out shopping for hours or making calls, and then she pays down fair and honorable like a lady. There's no beating down or making 3 hours into 2 hours and a half, as some folks do, and it is easy work for the horses, not like tearing along to catch trains for people that are always a quarter of an hour too late, or if I don't oblige her in this matter, it is very likely we shall lose them altogether. What do you say, little woman? I say, Jerry, says she, speaking very slowly, I say, if Mrs. Briggs would give you a sovereign every Sunday morning, I would not have you have a 7 days cabman again. We have known what it was to have no Sundays, and now we know what it is to call them our own. Thank God you earn enough to keep us, though it is sometimes close work to pay for all the oats and hay, the license and the rent besides. But Harry will soon be earning something, and I would rather struggle on harder than we do than go back to those horrid times when you hardly had a minute to look at your own children. And we never could go to a place of worship together, or have a happy, quiet day. God forbid that we should ever turn back to those times. That is what I say, Jerry. And that is just what I told Mr. Briggs, my dear, said Jerry, and what I mean to stick to. So don't go and fret yourself, Polly, for she had begun to cry. I would not go back to the old times if I earned twice as much. So that it is settled, little woman. Now cheer up, and I'll be off to the stand. 3 weeks had passed after this conversation, and no order had come from Mrs. Briggs, so there was nothing but taking jobs from the stand. Jerry took it to heart a good deal, for of course the work was harder for horse and man, but Polly would always cheer him up and say, Never mind, father, never mind. Do your best and leave the rest. 'Twill all come right some day or night. That's the end of our chapter this evening. And I think you enjoyed with me knowing that Jerry had to have time with his family and his wife. And he felt that it was only right that he should also have a day of rest and a day that he could go and worship as he chose to do. And there wasn't any need for him to give that up just to make some more money. So he has a principle, and he's holding to it. And his wife is agreeing that that's what's best for their family, because they know that money is not always the most important thing. And sometimes you have to do things that are right and things that are the best for you instead of what will just make you more money. Thanks for joining us tonight. Please come back tomorrow evening when we'll read chapter 37. Good night.